Hey everyone! Welcome to my channel. I'm a huge Life is Strange fan, and Double Exposure was the kind of game that just wouldn't let me go. You know that feeling when you finish something and your brain keeps asking, but wait, what actually happened? Yeah, that was me, for weeks. So, I did what any completely normal person would do. I replayed it several times. Spent over 100 hours between Double Exposure and Reunion. Took notes, went down every rabbit hole I could find, and eventually, this video happened. I hope it gives you the answers you've been looking for. Let's go! Before we get to Max and timelines, we need to go back further, to a girl who never appears on the screen, whose name you hear more than you see her, and whose story is the reason any of this happened in the first place. Maya Okada was 18 when she left Tokyo for Caledon University in 2017. Left her family, her language, everything she knew. She described the separation as trying to breathe water, and she processed all of it through writing with a precision and depth that genuinely stunned the people around her. Safi, who became her best friend, said Maya was the best writer she had ever known. Lucas Calmanero became her mentor. 3 times a week throughout 2017 they worked on her manuscript together, and then in 2018 he published her work under his own name, a book called Wilder Beasts Than This. Her words, his name. Only a small circle of people knew the truth. Safi, Win, Gwen, Yasmin. Safi asked Maya to stay silent. She regretted that for the rest of her life. Maya died in 2019. She was 20 years old. After her death, Yasmin made sure the story stayed buried. She offered Win a job and health insurance in exchange for telling journalists that Maya had mental health issues. A small cherry blossom tree was planted on campus, and that was supposed to be the end of it. Spoiler, it wasn't. Safi spent years trying to set the record straight. Her book was her attempt to finally give Maya the justice she never got. That's what all of this was for. Yasmin ordered the cancellation of Safi's book herself. She used Win to redirect Safi's anger. Yasmin never pulled the trigger, but she built every condition that led to Safi's death. Maya is the hidden first cause of everything. Her shadow falls over every event in the game. Before we get into the events, let's establish the rules the games and comics have set. And we'll start with a brief history of how those rules evolved, because it matters for everything that follows. In the original Life is Strange game, created by Don't Not, Max's rewind ability worked in a specific way. Every time she changed something significant in the past, she created a new branching timeline. She was, in that sense, actively generating alternate realities through her choices. She was a creator. The comics narrative was expanded. Max didn't just navigate the reality she had created, she started perceiving realities that existed independently of her actions entirely, ones she had never touched or altered. The multiverse turned out to be much larger than what she made. In the comics, this perception is called flickers, brief moments when Max accidentally catches a glimpse of an alternate timeline bleeding through. We even see one of those timelines play out directly, a reality where both Chloe and Rachel are alive and living their dream together. A timeline Max never touched, one that simply existed. Double Exposure and Reunion, developed by Deck 9, built on that expanded model. The parallel timelines Max encounters in Double Exposure aren't ones she created through past decisions. They exist on their own. She's a navigator, moving through a multiverse that was always there. This is the foundation this video works from. I think it's the model that makes the most sense of everything Double Exposure and Reunion are doing, and it's supported by most recent canonical material. But I want to be upfront about this evolution in the lore, because if you're coming from the original game, it might feel like a shift, and it is. That's worth acknowledging. This rule describes the following. When Max jumps into a photo, she lands exactly where, when, and in which timeline it was taken. When Max jumps into the photo, she replaces herself at that point of time. She never encounters another version of herself anywhere in the series. The same applies to anyone who travels with her. Max can bring objects with her when she travels. In Double Exposure, this was tested with a person for the first time. She grabbed Safi's hands and jumped. It worked. Max can create localized temporal bubble, freezing or looping a confinite space around her while she moves freely within it. Instead of rewinding everything, she isolates a specific moment and manipulates objects within it without disturbing the broader timeline. We see this in the first game, in the comics, and in the reunion. It's a smaller, more precise version of her power, and arguably the most controlled form it ever takes. At the end of the first game, Max made one of the hardest choices in the series: to sacrifice Arcadia Bay and save Chloe, or otherwise save Arcadia Bay. Now, depending on which starting path you chose in Double Exposure, the story before December 2023 looks a little different. In one version, Chloe is gone, and Max spent years traveling alone, trying to outrun everything that happened, toning down her abilities. In another version, they traveled together for years, but Max couldn't stop rewinding, couldn't stop trying to control every outcome, and eventually it cost her that relationship too. They went their separate ways. Different path, same result. By December 2023, Max has gone completely quiet. No powers, just silence. And years of trying to pretend that that part of her doesn't exist. Now let's talk about the timelines. Finally, as you can say. But I'd like to add here a short disclaimer. Max is unreliable narrator, in my opinion. She has incomplete memories, she's affected by Stormnesia, and everything she tells us about what's happening in her perception of events is not necessarily the truth. But the real thing, we as players have the full picture, and that's our advantage. In Double Exposure, the game clearly states there are two timelines: the living one and the dead one. Safi is alive, or she isn't. Simple enough. Don't you think so? Then, in Reunion, Max and Moses talk about merging these two timelines and claim that's what brought Chloe back. It sounds logical on the surface, but there is a problem. At the very start of Double Exposure, you make a choice. Is Chloe alive or not? And that choice affects both timelines equally and simultaneously. If you choose Chloe dead, she's dead in both the living timeline and the dead timeline. Merging two timelines, where Chloe is dead in both, simply cannot bring her back. The math doesn't work. This is the core reason Max is unreliable narrator. Her explanation is internally inconsistent. It doesn't hold up, which means there has to be a third timeline, one that exists independently of the player's choice, where Chloe is always alive, and that's the one Max felt and pulled towards in the Stormnesia moment. There is actually a hint in the official comics about how something like that could work. There was a character called Pixie, whose ability was to sense possible realities and locate the right one. Tristan was Max's guide. He helped her physically navigate there. Together, the three of them found the exact reality where her Chloe was located. In Double Exposure and Reunion, it seems Max developed both of these abilities on her own. She sensed the third timeline as a possibility and pulled it in, merging it with the live timeline, with living timeline. But because of Stormnesia, she forgot she ever did it, and then built an incorrect theory based on incomplete memories. That's why the paradox birth in the reunion isn't the truth. It's the best reconstruction Max and Moses could put together from what she remembered, and she didn't remember everything. In the Eye of Storm, Max reaches a place unlike anything else in the game, a crossroads, and here, all at once, she sees everything she's ever lost. Dead Safi, dead Chloe, destroyed Arcadia Bay. And what happens next is the most mathematical in its elegance. Think of it like filling in the gaps. The live timeline brings Safi, the third timeline brings Chloe and Arcadia Bay. Two realities joining together, each contributing what the other is missing. Option 1 or option 2, it doesn't matter. The result is the same. Every empty space gets filled with the best possible version of itself. The merge isn't something Max calculated or planned. It's not technical at all. It's Max finally allowing herself to reach for everything at once, and reality reshaping itself around that reach. And then the storm takes it from her memory. Moses called this side effect Stormnesia. Let's go back to the beginning. We'll go day by day of the double exposure, because details matter, and some of them are easy to miss the first time through. It starts earlier that day. Max is in the bar when a memory hits her out of nowhere. The Arcadia Bay storm. Chloe. She completely zones out. It's the first sign that something is already present through. That evening, Max, Safi, and Moses are out together on the observatory roof, stargazing, talking, the kind of night that feels ordinary right up until it doesn't. While photographing the moon, Max has her first episode, a severe headache. At some point, Safi gets a call from her publisher. She steps away to take it privately. Max goes to check on her. Walking down from the roof, she passes a beheaded snowman near the observatory. Safi was clearly furious. Most likely, she just heard the book was being cancelled. Then, on the path, she stops to photograph the owl on the fountain. And this time it's worse. She loses consciousness. Her nose bleeds. And for a moment she hears something. Again, Chloe at the bathroom of Arcadia Bay. Then Transect breaking through. She keeps walking up towards the overlook. And this is where it gets strange. Even at the top, Max sees Safi alive, talking, present, and then a gunshot, a voice saying, "No!" And when Max arrives fully, Safi is sitting dead on the bench, camera in her hands. One more thing. As Max was walking up, she saw green and red rippling waves in the air in front of her. And when she touched Safi's body, it glows the same green and red. This is a deliberate visual marker from the writers. This is not the Safi who we've seen alive. This Safi came from somewhere else. She jumped here from another timeline. But Max hasn't jumped yet. How did she get here without Max? The answer is simple, and it changes everything. This isn't the first cycle. But to understand that, we need to keep going. The grief over Safi breaks Max's years-long block. In the campus no squad, she starts hearing a second Moses from somewhere else. She follows him and sees a live Safi, like through a window, into another world. She reaches out and falls through into the living timeline. In the bar, she discovers the first portal and realizes she can switch timelines. She tries to figure out the nature of this place and what day it is in the second living timeline. She discovers it's December 6 in both timelines. Same day, different realities. The powers are back in a new form, not rewinding, perceiving parallel realities. Max decided to prevent Safi's death in living timeline and starts her investigation. Who is Maya? Why was Safi's book cancelled? Who killed her? That's what she's trying to find out. In the living timeline, in the North Quad, she finds Reggie deeply shaken. He tells her he saw himself at the Overlook just minutes ago. That's strange, and it's never happened before. But we know two realities are somehow intertwined here. Max decided to visit Overlook and check the crime scene. At the crime scene, a mug is stuck in a tree, the one Safi was drinking from the observatory roof before she died. The Overlook is a time vortex. Objects from different moments bleed into the same space. In the dead timeline, Max finds Safi's phone lying on the rock on the path up. It rings from an unknown number and plays back Safi's voice saying exactly what she said on December 4th. This isn't a recording, it's a time vortex replaying the moment. The phone is caught between temporal layers. At this exact moment, Max sees the owl, sits nearby and says she recognizes it. The same owl she photographed on the fountain 2 days earlier. Again, we'll come back to that later. I will explain everything, I promise. Max looks carefully through the crime scene and notices that some evidence markers stand in places where she doesn't remember anything being at the moment of Safi's death. Let's keep it in mind. Moses calls and asks her to rush to the observatory. There, the detective presses Moses for evidence from the crime scene, evidence he's confident Moses took. How could he know that? Later we'll find out Yasmin told the detective Safi must have had the camera with her. Max saves Moses and grabs the evidence from the lab before the detective finds it. It's Safi's camera, the one she was holding when Max and Moses found her dead. On the film they found a bizarre photo, Max pointing a gun at Safi. We called this photo gun photo later. Max has no memory of this. Moses, scared of Max, runs away. In the morning, Max tries to jump into the gun photo. She sees the Overlook, a storm. Storm? It wasn't there before. Safi pushing her to shoot. She can't see through to the end. She faints and her nose bleeds out. By December 7th, things are visibly stranger. There are already 2 Max in the tree at the Overlook. This isn't a counter for anything. It's physical evidence that the Overlook is a time vortex. Objects from different moments in time are bleeding into the same space. The tree is literally absorbing artifacts from multiple versions of that night. Max calls Moses and promises to explain everything. They agree to meet at the Overlook. There, Max and Moses see something that shouldn't be possible. A ghostly version of detective from December 6th, standing at the crime scene, recording his initial observations into a dictaphone. When the December 7th version of himself touches the December 6th version, they both evaporate. Moses searches for the detective online afterward, no record of his existence. He was erased from the world. December 6th, a lantern at the Overlook near the crime scene in the dead timeline was flickering and barely working. December 7th, it glows steady red. The instability is building towards something. Throughout the game, Max finds Polaroids she took herself, of events that never happened in either timeline. She makes a guess this is from another timeline, but I think it could be messages from previous versions of Max. In earlier cycles, she figured things out, played with different outcomes of her decisions and left photos for the next version of herself to find. She couldn't pass memories directly, but she could leave photographs. The owl appears again and again and again in different locations across different days. Each time Max says she recognizes it. In mythology, the owl guards the boundary between the living and the dead world. In double exposure, the owl photo became the anchor for the most important jump in the game. The owl is a consistent across all cycles. And then Max tells Moses her theory. The timeline split at the moment of Safi's death. That's what she believes. But she's wrong. The timelines didn't split. They've always existed in parallel. Her theory is built on incomplete information. Remember, she's unreliable narrator. We already talked about that earlier. We as players have the full picture. She doesn't. Taken together, the Von Stalker plan that night, the lantern shifting from flickering to steady red, Reggie seeing himself as a detective doubling and erasing himself, evidence markers standing in places Max doesn't remember, none of these are separate oddities. They are the same symptom showing up in different places. The Overlook has been the site of this exact night over and over, enough time that the seams between those repetitions are starting to show. The vortex isn't malfunctioning, it's straining under the weight of attempts that have run more time than reality can comfortably hold. An interesting observation about Vin, Safi's ex and her mother Yasmin's assistant. He was the one who smashed her windshield with a cow skull on December 6th in the living timeline. His motivation was that he had learned her book had been cancelled. He also knew that when she gets angry, she becomes a force of nature. That's direct quote. So he just decided to redirect the focus of her anger towards something else. What's interesting is that Safi apparently never told him this news. Gwen kept it a secret as well. Most likely he learned it from Yasmin, since she doesn't hide anything from him. He's essentially her lackey. However, during Yasmin's conversation with Max on December 7th, she pretended she was hearing this news for the first time. Later, she genuinely had a conversation with her daughter in which she supported her. The thing is, I think she's acting. To me, it indirectly reinforces her involvement and interest in the book's cancellation. If she already knew about it before most people did, then she was clearly part of the inner circle, and she was definitely lying to Max. In the living timeline, Max stole the gun from Lucas Calmanero before the roast. Why does he have the gun? What for? It only happens in the living timeline because it was cancelled in the dead one. This is why Max never had a gun here. This is why we believe Max didn't kill Safi in the original dead timeline. She physically couldn't. There was no weapon. After the roast, Lucas confesses to Safi that her own mother was behind the book cancellation. It destroys her emotionally. The storm starts. Safi's shape-shift ability spirals out of control. People around her get headaches, start repeating her words and thoughts like robots. They suffer. She's pushing her pain into everyone around her. Max finds Safi and Yasmin at the Overlook. Safi has finally learned the whole truth. That it was her own mother who cancelled the book, that it was her own mother who drove her father away after the divorce. Safi is furious. She takes the gun out of the pocket and shoots her mother. The bullet hits the shoulder. Safi starts shape-shifting uncontrollably. She's in agony. Yasmin begs Max to help her. Max grabs live Safi by the hand, the first time she's ever tried to travel with another person, and jumps into the old photo from December 4th. Her Rule 1, that photo was taken in the dead timeline. That's where they land. The storm follows them. Her Rule 2, The alive Safi replaces the dead Safi at this point of time. This is exactly why Max saw a live Safi on the Overlook on December 4th before and then in a few seconds finds the body. Jumping they replace those Safi. Safi confirms it herself. This weather is worse than I remember it. She was here on December 4th, but without the storm. The storm came with them from December 8th. They made different choices this time, and the night went differently. Safi is standing near the bench, and here Safi asks Max to shoot her, says she burned her bridges with so many people, that things went the way they did with her mother, that there is nothing left keeping her here. Then she says, maybe we are cursed, me, you, and Maya. The game has two versions of this dialogue. Let's recall the one that happened the day before, when Max jumped into the gun photo. In that version, Safi is sitting on the bench, emotional, raw. She's devastated and hopeless, asking Max to shoot her. There she just says, "Stop stalling, Max. Pull the trigger." She doesn't explain. She's tired of explaining. She's been through this before. She knows Max will hesitate. She's already heard all of it. I think this proves the loop is real. She remembers it, or feels it. In each cycle, she's a little more exhausted, a little less patient. By this version, she's no longer asking, she's instructing. This is one of the most heartbreaking details in the entire game. Safi hasn't just given up on life, she's given up on going through this over and over again. That's why Safi says, maybe we are cursed, me, you, and Maya, because she knows. It repeats, and it's all starts with Maya. By this time, Max refuses, throws the gun into the storm.
I'm not gonna make another impossible choice between two shitty futures.
A direct parallel to the ending of Life is Strange 1. They jump into the Eye of Storm. Before we follow Max into the Eye of Storm, we need to pause, because what just happened has a name, and understanding it changes how you see everything that came before. It's called the Bootstrap paradox. A bootstrap paradox is a situation where an object or chain of events exists without any original source. The classic example: you travel back in time and give Beethoven the sheet music for this Fifth Symphony. He publishes it. In the future, you find those same sheets and bring them back. But who wrote it? Nobody. It exists in a loop generating itself. That's exactly what happens in double exposure, the time loop. Max finds Safi's body, she finds the camera with the photo, she jumps to the Overlook on December 4th with the live Safi, the gun scene happens, the photo is taken, and over again. Gun photo exists without an origin. And here is the most important question. Who killed Safi the first time? Before the loop even started. At some point there had to be a first death that wasn't the result of jump. But we'll never see that point. The loop consumed it long ago. This is why the entire construction is a bootstrap paradox. In the original Life is Strange game, the storm wasn't a random thing. It was a symptom. The natural world responding to too much temporal instability. Dead whales on the beach, birds falling from the sky, snow in October, 2 moons. Each anomaly was a warning. The storm was the breaking point. In double exposure, we see the same kind of escalation. The lantern changing color, objects bleeding through from other moments in time, reality at the Overlook visibly straining. What if the storm in double exposure is the same kind of symptom, not caused by one person rewinding time or shapeshifting, but by a loop repeating itself attempt after attempt, each iteration adding more pressure to the seams of reality? Each attempt left a mark. The Overlook accumulated the weight of those repetitions, the vortex grew. Then, in the last attempt, two things happened simultaneously. The accumulated instability of previous cycles reached a breaking point, and Safi's emotional collapse after Lucas' confession pushed her shapeshiftability completely out of control. Together, the strained reality and Safi's spiraling power created a devastating storm. The storm in double exposure didn't exist from the beginning. It was built, cycle by cycle, and it became the very thing that made the merge possible. So, Max and Safi have jumped. They are inside the Eye of Storm now. The Eye of Storm is a space between realities, like the Transect from the comics. The storm reminds Max of Chloe and of Arcadia Bay. Through that old wound, she starts feeling the third timeline, where Chloe is always alive. Safi dissolves. Her pieces end up inside other people. Max moves through locations that matter to her. The University North Quad, the observatory roof. Here she sees a well-known blue butterfly flying toward the door, the iconic symbol of the series. Blackwell's bathroom, where Chloe was shot. The writers put the scene of Max shooting Safi here on purpose. The two most important people in Max's life, and both times she's standing right there next to their deaths. The bowling alley, where Max pulls Safi's essence out of Lucas and Win, the people connected to Maya's story. In the bowling alley, Max notices something important. Maya's memorial tree that should be in the North Quad is there. In the Eye of Storm, next to the people connected to her story. The tree ended up where the guild for Maya lives. Then we see mortal rooms. In the Eye of Storm, Max's phone shows frozen messages from her parents and Warren from October 2013. The Eye of Storm is outside time. All of Max's key and most dramatic moments exist here simultaneously. Now the observatory roof, and something worth stopping on. At the very beginning of the game, on the observatory roof, during the stargazing night, there are 4 telescopes. I counted. It's 4. And here, in the Eye of Storm, on the same roof, there are 7. If each new cycle adds 1 telescope, this must be the 4th cycle now. It's just only my theory. What do you think about that? Leave your comments below. Max must then make her way to the bar, but there's something interesting that we see from Reunion. Between the motel and the bar, Max ends up somewhere else, where she sees dead Safi, the Arcadia Bay lighthouse, and dead Chloe all at once. This is the crossroads of all her losses. Max doesn't make a conscious technical decision. No plan, just to reach toward everything she's missed, and reality shapes itself around that. That's where the merge happens. The storm wipes this from her memory. We call it Stormnesia. Max keeps going not remembering she just changed everything. But we know, because we had the full picture all along. The bar, the observatory roof, one last conversation with Safi, the overlook, the storm fades, the timelines merge, Arcadia Bay is alive, Chloe is alive, Safi is alive, and quietly, almost unnoticed, Maya's tree returns to the North Quad. But now, it's larger, it's blooming. The merge didn't just bring back the living, it restored the truth about Maya. Her story, which had been suppressed and erased, now exists in full. Poetic. The curse of Maya and Safi finally broken. This is my personal theory, and I want to share it because the clues are too specific to be accidental. In the living timeline, we find a receipt for a gun purchased in Lucas's suitcase. He bought it before the roast, brought it to the event. He's the one Max takes it from. But why did Lucas buy a gun? The official version, he was afraid of Safi. He had a restraint order against her. He blamed her for turning his son against him. But there might be another version. Lucas knew that Safi was preparing to publish a book that would bring up the story of Maya, the story of how he stole someone else's manuscript. That's the end of his career, his reputation, possibly his freedom. Yasmin could have warned him. They were both interested in stopping the book from coming out. He had a motive, he had a gun, and in the dead timeline, where the roast never happened, where there was no crowd, where Max never took the gun from him, he could have acted differently. The writers didn't put a date on the receipt. We never saw the contents of his suitcase in the dead timeline. That's either unintentional ambiguity or an oversight. But here's what follows if you accept this version. If Lucas killed Safi in the very first cycle, he's the one who started the entire loop. And in every subsequent cycle, the jump happened before he reached the Overlook, which is why his presence was never detected here. The man who stole everything from Maya may have been the one who unknowingly set in motion the chain of events that ultimately led to Maya's truth finally coming out to light. Poetic justice, in its purest form. Double exposure is two games in one. There is a game on the surface, two timelines, a mystery, a choice, and there is the other game underneath, a loop that ran multiple times before we arrived. A time vortex consuming the place where it all happened, a dead girl whose story keeps trying to surface, and a protagonist who doesn't really fully understand any of it. In the last first attempt, Max finally makes a different choice. She doesn't shoot, she doesn't sacrifice, she reaches for what she loves, and reality folds itself around that. The writers didn't explain all of this directly. Some of it they may not have fully worked out themselves, but the details are there. 7 telescopes, 2 versions of dialogues, the Max in the tree, the all Max remembers, the Polaroids, and etc. They left the breadcrumbs. We just had to follow them. Thank you very much for staying with me. Hope you like it. Please leave your comments below. I will be really happy to read all of your thoughts. Bye bye!